Hello, everybody. It's Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group. I realized I've been sitting here in the background while you guys have been looking at me sitting here. So sorry about that. We didn't use Zoom for a long time. We just came back to it. So I'm a little Zoom rusty. But hey, thank you so much for joining our program today. I'm really delighted that you're here. We're going to be discussing state of distributor profitability. We have a special guest, Scott Sinning, who's the founder and principal of Margin Max Partners. We'll be getting to Scott in just a minute. We're really delighted that he's here, just like we're delighted that you are here. But first, let's do a little business. We got to pay the bills, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. First of all, we have our fourth annual Applied AI for Distributors 2026. June 23rd through 25th in Chicago. This is just a small list of the hundreds, literally hundreds of companies who have signed up for this event, hundreds of executives. We have some companies sending 6 people, 5 people, 4 people. This has really become a topic that you cannot afford to get behind on. So I hope you'll join us. We have very few spots left. If you don't join up in the next few days, you're probably not going to be able to attend. We've been working with the facility to change the seating and get more people in, but we're just about to burst the seams there. We're actually going to a new property next year. The speaker lineup is pretty amazing. We've got Dana Stone, who's the SVP of marketing at Graybar. We got Matt Sigelman, who's talking about the impact of AI on jobs. Natasha Broxton, who's doing these amazing things with AI at this wholesale and retail auto parts recycling company in Milwaukee. Johnny Leroy, who's the SVP and CTO at Granger, will be there. Nick Pericles, very, very bright AI innovator, is going to be doing a post-show workshop. Of course, my business partner, Jonathan Bond, is going to do a pre-show workshop. Jeff Kroom, who's a distinguished engineer at IBM with a PhD in cybersecurity, is going to be talking about all these new challenges. I was thinking this morning about, you think about all of the new security challenges that came out of the implementation of e-commerce. Now, multiply that 100-fold or 1,000-fold. Those are the challenges you're going to be facing in the age of AI. So you really don't want to miss that particular talk. Dwayne Roberts, a friend of mine who's the president of Summit Electric Supply, is going to be talking along with Stu Tisdale on a panel about how to manage AI at a distribution company. Alex Chalsofsky, our favorite economist, with no offense to other economists, will be talking about the economy through an AI lens. And then our own COO, world-class user of LLMs. If you think you know LLMs, sit in on Brian's workshop after the show. You're going to be surprised what you learn. He's just absolutely amazing with it. So please join us there. We also have a couple of regional AI forums. These are one-day events. One's in Atlanta, Georgia on August 12th, and one is in Birmingham in the UK, the United Kingdom, October 15th, 2026. So we're very happy to produce those events to bring this kind of expertise to distributors so you can run a better business. Now, we do have 3 of our own software products. We call it the Distributor RX Software Suite, Customer Experience RX. It's like a net promoter score on steroids, right? It's like an MRI on your business from the customer's perspective. So rather than getting just an overall score and a comment, you get a deep dive that you can segment any way you want to, geographically, job function, customer industry, and you will get feedback on your delivery performance, your sales rep performance, your customer service performance, your pricing, you name it. It's very, very powerful. You've never seen anything like it, I guarantee you, because Jonathan Bond, my business partner, invented it after working with distributors for 18 years, much of it about customer satisfaction and experience. Employee experience is built on the same architecture. This is employee engagement software. And then Demand RX, I think this is the best system like it anywhere. I don't think there's anything comparable to it. We start with your data, supplement outside data, and then we look at your entire market of customers and prospects and tell you what they buy by your product line. We don't bring a generic product hierarchy in. We say, here's how you divide your products. Here's your experience with customers, and here are your numbers. And we can actually tailor it, or you can tailor it. You know, if there's a location that looks wrong, you can go in and see, oh, the employee count's wrong, and that's throwing off the estimate, for example. So it's really tunable to your business. I think it's by far the most accurate and best product out there, in my opinion. Okay, enough of the business. Let's get to the heart of the matter. I'd like to welcome in my good friend, actually former Graybar VP of Pricing Strategy. I think that was your title, right, Scott?
Yes.
Good. And now founder and principal of Margin Max Partners. So Scott, welcome to the program. I'm delighted to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Ian, very much, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. I look forward to talking with you about the state of distributor profitability.
Yeah, I mean, what could be more fun than making money? So let's have some fun, shall we?
Let's do it. Well, yeah, it's a great time to talk about distributor the state of distributor profitability, because we are in the middle of 2026. The year is almost half over already, if we can believe it. And distributors are facing a variety of challenges on top of the normal stuff that it takes to run a successful distributor. So we're going to cover a lot of material today and have some fun doing it and give your audience their money's worth with some really practical takeaways that people can use in their business if they're not already using it today. So diving right in here, what's new in 2026? Well, a lot. The headline is, of course, a lot of cost increases year over year. The commodity inflation numbers are driving a lot of cost changes from manufacturers through distribution channel that distributors then have to figure out how to do something with in terms of that cost recovery and passing through to prices. The impacts of industry consolidation. It seems every day I look at my news feed and there's something from DSG talking about something new in the industry that changes the game for a lot of people, and we likely will see that continue. The lead times around certain critical components driven by the hyperscale build-outs of data centers is particularly poignant for certain vertical market distributors. And then, of course, we can't have a webinar without talking about AI and the pace of AI and just what that really means for us and what distributors are already doing, as well as what we think might come up in the future. And I know that's a subject near and dear to your heart with the conference coming up later this month. So that sets the stage, Ian. Let's keep going.
Okay, real quick, Scott. So I do have a question from someone who's asking if anyone is hearing an echo. I do not hear an echo. Do you hear one, Scott?
I do not.
Okay, so sorry, anonymous attendee, but that does remind me that if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. We'll be happy to address it. So, but no echo on our end. I just read this morning. I mean, literally, when I was caught looking at my phone before the webinar started, I was reading an article about inflation was 4.2%. I think that was first quarter. It may have been last month. I'm not sure because I was just glancing at it, and they said 60% of that is energy prices, because of what's happening in the Middle East. So, you know, we're not out of the woods on inflation. We may be entering the woods. Okay, here you
Agreed.
go. There you go, Scott.
All right. So we're going to tackle a lot today, Ian, as we've talked about. We want to make this very useful for folks. And really, as we go through it, think about this as going to be into basically three sections today. We're going to take a look at the state of distributor profitability through the lens of the recent DSG survey, which is going to be a couple slides. Then we're going to talk about some practical ideas of where to find hidden margin and maybe some areas that not everybody always pays attention to, but there's some real dollars there. And then lastly, we're going to go over a few slides and points that are really we might consider classics. That are just good back to basics refreshers for the audience. Again, and then we're going to finish up with a robust discussion around AI. So as we go through this, some of this may resonate as things you're already doing, and some of it might be a refresher, or some cases it might be new. But in any case, we hope you walk away with some valuable tips today. So Ian, when I read your survey with a lot of interest, and there was a few takeaways, and one of the points that came out of your recent survey was that the top quartile gap is real. Um, and what that means is that according to the survey respondents, there was over 200 respondents from a diverse set of vertical markets, ownership structures. Uh, it was really a pretty good voice of what's happening out there broadly. The leading performers, top quartile, are using some kind of tools around price optimization, rebate management, at a much higher rate than those that are not. And then why that's important is not because software solves everything. It certainly does not. But in this day and age, with the things that are happening at speed and scale, having some kind of a tool to help inform your team of what's going on with price actions, cost actions, and just to manage it all. It seems like the top quartile is running away with that, Ian, and maybe that's always been that way, but it's just stands out as something to keep in mind that um, you want to get on this and get on it fast if you feel that you got room to catch up. But the leaders will continue to lead, and it's not that they're without as challenges as well,
Yeah.
but they maybe leaned into some of this 5, 10 years ago and are now making it look easy. Whereas some of folks are more in the first couple of years in the burn-in period, or just kind of figuring out where to get started. But wherever you stand, just know that the race is on, and the top quartile is leading at least in this area of automation.
Great.
The next point on the survey, which really I thought was one of the most notable things that surprised me, and maybe it surprised you too, Ian, when we look at this, have to ask why, is that we call it the 4% measurement gap. So, of the companies that are investing in AI, 40% said they were doing it to improve profitability, yet only 4% are actually measuring that in profitability terms, which begs the question, well, why would that be? And I'll just throw out a couple of ideas. And Ian, welcome your comments as we
Yep.
go through here too. Is maybe it's because we weren't just sure what to measure. So while the good intentions are, hey, we're going to do AI because we think we're going to make more money, we're going to save money, it's going to improve margin, whatever it might be. Making sure you really understand that use case or what you're trying to improve on and how it's going to be measured in terms of dollar terms. So you have a baseline of, hey, how's it look now? And then after you implement the tool and you start rolling that out, you can see, hey, what are we doing after? And try to attribute any deltas to what you're doing. So I think just knowing what your baseline case is for what you're measuring, how you're going to measure it, and then just having the discipline to measure it. Because I think that stands kind of a stark contrast as what we might expect is if you're going to put money into an AI project, you should know why you're doing it and you should be able to measure it afterward, right, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this slide over here and I'm thinking that's an order of magnitude difference between, those who are investing and those who are actually measuring the ROI of their investment on AI. So I guess my hypothesis here, Scott, is that there's a lot of mandate around AI coming from boards and from senior executives where we will adopt AI. We don't really know what we're going to get for it yet. And there was some of that in the digital era too, right? Where we're going to spend on a website, even if we're not sure what the ROI is. Those people in the end wound up being way ahead, by the way. I mean, there's a reason Granger is one of the world's leaders at B2B e-commerce. I mean, I had nothing to do with this. I was there when it happened, but when I remember those decisions by I mean, I was in the executive team that had those discussions, but there were other leaders who were heading up that initiative. And we had a guy named Don Belinsky who had been the CFO and then became SVP of marketing and sales. And he said, I don't care if we can't prove it, which is an odd thing for a former CFO to say. This is the right thing to do. We'll figure it out. And that led to this extraordinary investment by Granger, even though they didn't know the ROI. And here it is 30 years later, and they've sustained that advantage that they built on the foundation back then. And, I would say, look, people are going to waste a lot of money on AI. They're also going to spend a lot of money on AI that gives them a permanent competitive advantage. And so I think I will say this though, I think this stuff's a lot easier to measure than a lot of other things that people do in AI, and that there's also this sort of lack of rigor because the fact that it's AI almost becomes an excuse. Well, it's AI, I don't have to measure it. We just know it's inherently a good thing, and I think that can excuse a lot of sins that you probably should be held accountable for. I think you can measure a lot of this stuff, particularly in margin and profitability.
Agreed. All right, let's take a look at this last key observation that came out of the DSG survey. And it was really around the importance of data. And we can think of data a couple ways. It's the clean, data hygiene, how accurate it is, how complete it is. And I think a lot of distributors have made a lot of progress on that. And obviously that's an ongoing, you got to always keep doing it. But there's another thing about, the idea you can't fix what you can't see. So even though you may have data that's good data, if it's not getting around to the right people at the right time to make the right decisions, it's not doing you any good. So part of it's about having quality data hygiene in terms of, customer master data, material master data, particularly for what we're talking about on margin. But then making sure that that gets put into the right type of reporting and the right type of visibility to the right audiences so that decisions can be made faster and better with that. Um, so just something to think about when you think about profitability. Data might not be the first one that comes to mind, but I think the survey revealed that a lot of the some of the advanced analytics and the AI tools that can really leapfrog you ahead rely on having reasonably good data. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but it needs to be good. And then you need to be thinking about how you're going to share that with decision makers to run the business smarter and faster.
Yeah, I think this is a continuation of garbage in, garbage out, right? So, here we have, at least in my career, 40 years of exposure to technology, and they said garbage in, garbage out in the 80s when I was, first working at Granger. Here it is decades later, and it's still garbage in, garbage out. But I will say that I can't remember ever meeting with a distributor who didn't think their data was terrible. And they think theirs is particularly terrible. And in my experience, distributors, yeah, I mean, you just have to accept there's a lot of messiness in the data, but AI is better at dealing with messiness than other technologies, first of all. And secondly, you don't have to have better data. You don't have to have perfect data. You just have to be as much better than your competitors as you can get. And there's enough data to work with these tools and in particular to drive profitability in every distributor I've ever worked with.
Great point. All right, so moving forward here, I want to start covering here some areas that were of, we might think of it as back to basics, but it's also some of this is what, we might think of as also, these are sort of hidden margin opportunities that always don't jump off the page at you when you're looking at your income statement or looking at your profit numbers. But we're going to talk real briefly about three areas that have been, that are priorities for distributors. And in fact, I recently did a webinar with about 30 distributors, and I asked a little survey question to say, hey, what are the top profit leaks that you're worried about in your business? And this is a word cloud that shows just by volume, by count, what people said. And it's kind of interesting, this is might resonate with each the audience here, but the ones we're going to talk about are spas, cost increases, and overrides, or really price realization. So uh, with that, let's just jump into the next slide. And actually, we're going to start with price realization, which is really the concept around overrides and the idea of the price setting to price getting. This is a topic I've heard Ian, you talk about as well as Jonathan, the term of price setting to price getting. So it's one thing to figure out how you're setting your prices. And let's level set real quick. This is mostly for what we might think of as your warehouse sales, standard stock SKUs, where you want to have a system price that's accurate because you sell it all the time and you want to try to help inform your sales team and CSRs. Forget about now a little bit for the project and custom big project jobs that might be direct ships. The real area here is to say within your warehouse, what are you selling it for? What do you think you're selling it for? And by the time discounting happens, on invoice and off invoice, giveaway, give gets happen with rebates and freight and everything, what's your actual net price? Okay, 'cause sometimes there can be a really big difference, right? And most of the time there is. So just because you think you set the right price through a brilliant algorithm or AI tool, you want to make sure you're following that transaction to what's actually happening on the transaction and the invoice document to say, what did we actually sell it for and what are we making? And one area that comes in there is oftentimes figuring out what are your overrides and how is your sales team making those decisions. And we'll actually visit that later on in the presentation, Ian, with our favorite number chart, is the famous 0 and 5. But this is just, again, high level thinking about margin from not just where you're setting prices, but the process along the way that nibbles at that margin up to and including what's the final invoice price and what you put in your pocket.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because I guess, the on invoice discounts, this is the stuff that you plan for, right?
Hmm.
And you're expecting to get that target price. But then, these tactical discounts, it's ironic because one of the reasons that customers often won't buy on a distributor's website is it's the most expensive way to buy from that distributor, and they know it because they figured out that if they call Bill or Sue on the inside sales desk, they can get another five off, right? And not only is that a lower profitability transaction, it's also a more expensive transaction to process versus the customer entering it themselves on a website. It's also more prone to error. So you're giving away an awful lot to get that sale. And in many cases, that discount's not even necessary, right? And
Hmm.
but then you look at that second green bar, it's $67, in this particular example, you're losing another $10 after that target price to stuff that's actually within your control. And that's more than the profitability percentage, the bottom line profit before taxes for most distributors.
Yes, perfect. So this is something to keep in mind. Many of you, the audience, may already do this or have seen it. It can be built with a lot of commercial tools that are out there already, but it helps you see, it helps you really evaluate your customer profitability, not just from a pricing point of view, but also terms, rebates, back
Right.
ends, freight, something to keep in mind. All right, let's move along to the next one. Power of 1%. Ian, I know you know this one very well as well, but this is just a high level, again, to make the point. And there's a lot of good research around this, but in this simple example, you can say if you're a $500 million distributor and you can raise price by 1%, all other things equal, without any loss of volume, which is, by the way, very doable. It happens all the time.
Right.
That can produce more profit for you than any other thing that you're going to do. Because in this case, you can see sales went up. There was no change in cost of goods or selling expense, OPEX, and the net change in profit before taxes, 5 million bucks, right? That's a lot of money. And it favorably compares against any other things that people sometimes try to do, which is, hey, let's cut cost of goods sold, let's negotiate better costs with our suppliers, or hey, let's just go out and crank out more volume, let's make up for it in volume, or hey, let's go cut OPEX and look at some SG&A expenses where we can cut, operating expenses. Those are all good and noble when you need to pull those levers, but the biggest lever any distributor has is to figure out how to manage pricing up and while keeping everything else the same. And that's really the leverage of pricing that leading distributors have understood and have been practicing for years now.
Yeah, I mean, because the 1% is driving improvement strictly through the bottom line, which is only 7.5% of the total sale, right? And so it's 1% over 7.5%. It's not 1% over 100%. So people think about, well, if I raise price 1%, it's 1% in profit increase. And I've heard people say that before. And then you show them the numbers and you're like, no, it's in this case 13.3% based on a 1% increase. It's almost as though people they struggle to understand that until they actually see it written down like this. And there are different ways to get there, right? You can use software, you can use policies, you can use training, but a lot of it is around measurement and reporting and accountability. In my experience, you get those right, and you can augment it with other tools like software.
Yeah. And so this slide really is helps people understand, well, why worry about pricing? Because we got 10 other things that are really important too. And that's not to say that the other things aren't important, but it is to say investments around price and margin optimization pay the biggest dividend, frankly. Okay, the next slide here, and this is another great classic slide that really talks about the sales growth required to offset discounts. So the way this table lays out, yeah, it just to orient yourself real quick here is on the left side, it's your what you might think of as your standard gross margin rate between and just in terms of how your company runs, and then it's looking at what the discount is along the top the horizontal axis. And so just to kind of keep it simple, let's say you offer a 1% discount, uh, and then you're in a 20% margin business. Well, it takes 4.2% more volume growth or sales growth to make up that same margin that you gave away. Probably as a 1% might be a small discount in the minds of your sales team, but unless you're going to make 4% more volume, you're basically giving up you're giving up that margin. So this is a very big eye opener. And just a pro tip, when you think about discounting, I mean, everybody knows that you don't really want to over discount or discount unnecessarily. This puts a dollar value to say, well, if you cut it by a certain amount and you think you're going to make up for it in volume, cool, no problem. Well, double check how much more volume you're going to need to make up for that before you kind of throw away those discounts. The other little tip is that when you think about discounting, it's not just what you discount off of a price, it's also what you don't pass through in terms of a cost change. So let's say you have a supplier going up 5% next month. which I mean, that's been happening all year already, right?
Yep.
If you're not making sure you're passing that through, and there's different ways to do it, we'll talk about it as well. That's a de facto discount. And so let's say you decide, well, we're going to wait 30 or 60 days to pass through that next supplier, big supplier increase. Well, you're gonna have to sell a whole lot more to make up for that margin because that's never coming back. If you know, so the
Right.
really important to stay on top of those things because the discounts require you to sell a lot more than you think you do just to get back to the same number.
Yeah, and look, we've got distributors of different levels of sophistication listening to us right now. Um, and so if you're a big distributor, probably your national account agreements already, or your, major account agreements already say you're going to pass through cost increases. Do all of your local agreements have that built in? Do your branch managers and account managers all know this? And then how good are you at actually making sure that happens? Because that takes your systems and processes set up properly to do that. And then how do you know? Are you really measuring it? And by the time you get to that third question, Scott, there aren't a lot of distributors left who feel like they can confidently raise their hand and say, yeah, we've got this locked down,
Right.
even if they're pretty sophisticated.
I agree. I agree. And we're going to cover that in a couple more slides, but it's hard to stay on top of that. But is also a reason if you don't, here's what it's going to take to make up for it. So um, all good. Ian, I know you're passionate about this slide, and we talked about it the other day, but this is a classic, and it's a lot of fun to do. Um, and and it's the 0 and 5 problem, or some people call this the finger chart, because depending on how the normal distribution looks, it looks like it's giving you the finger, if you know what I mean. Because there's typically a central tendency, even besides the 0 and 5, where you can look at a company, a branch, a sales rep, and there's certain habits that I've almost without fail I've seen in my career, and it's a great coaching opportunity. So people complain about the 0 and 5. What's that really mean? Well, if your sales team is pricing manually, making decisions about price based on a cost basis, most typically they pick a margin that's a 0 and 5, or zero ends in 0 or a 5. And this graph is just an illustration of how that data typically stacks up. And sometimes it's even more stark where it's it's 18 or it's 20 or something that a sales rep says they might even not consciously know that they do it. But the fun
Right.
part of this slide, Ian, I'd love you to get your thoughts, is when I've run it before, it can be a great coaching tool, and not in a way that you're beating your team over the head with it, but it's a way you can sit down with a branch manager or a P&L leader, branch manager, or a sales rep. It's because it's not hard to build. You can build it with your own data with an Excel file, basically.
Right.
And you can sit down and have that conversation. And sales team, it's always like, oh, I didn't realize I did that. It's not, it's like looking at your golf swing on a video machine. It can looks a little ugly sometimes, at least from my case. But when you see that yourself on film, or you can see yourself in your own data, it's a mirror that helps you say, oh, you know what? That is a tendency I have. And really the idea here is to nudge that to the right. And I'd be curious about what your thoughts are and how you've seen this applied in your career, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a basic analysis you have to do, and I usually do it based on markup, right? So,
Right.
uh, what's the average markup? So here's my invoice cost, and if my sales force and my branch people have any pricing authority, and most of them do, what are they marking up on average, or marking up to on average? And like you said, almost always what you get is a chart like this where the everybody's marking up on the fives, right? So they're marking up 10% or 15% or 20% or 25%, which tells you a couple things. First of all, it just means they're guessing because there's no precision to it. They're just throwing out a number. Secondly, it means there's room to move because you're going to lose very little to no business marking up 17 instead of 15, or 22 instead of 20, or 27 instead of 25, particularly on low price sensitivity items. Yeah, and now research has proven that customers will spend less time analyzing less strategic or important purchases. They just want to get those POs off their desk, and you're just leaving money on the table. And we just looked at the power of 1%. Now imagine taking a big chunk of your business, marking it up an additional 2%, and you're certainly not going to lose anywhere near the amount of business that you're going to gain in profitability. And it's just a bad habits thing that you need to fix. And this one you can start on tomorrow. I mean, you can you can run the analysis this afternoon and tomorrow announce to the organization 22 is the new 20 or something like that.
Yes.
And just start measuring, hey, we're going to run this for your branch, district, region, business unit every month. And we're going to see if you have moved these numbers to the right, because we want to see markups on the sevens now instead of on the fives. That's a very blunt instrument, but it works great.
Yes, indeed. And like I say, it comes across, at least in my experience, it comes across as a lot more positive way to coach a sales team up versus just banging on the head saying stop overriding or raise your prices somehow. That's great, but when you can show them, hey, here's your actual book of business for the last year to date or whatever period you want to measure, and it's like, oh, yeah, 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 I get it. And then you say, we're going to start running this every month. And what we want to challenge you with, what do you think you think you could move it a point or two over to the right here
Right.
and involve them to say, oh, yeah, I think I can do that. Do you think it's going to cost you any business? No, I can do that. It's not going to cost me any business, just to your point, Ian. And then you measure that and you can see those graphs starting to fill up outside of the zeros and fives. And that's a real life tangible margin gain. And it doesn't take any software to do that, really. It's just helping your sales team understand their own behaviors and then have management understand what you're trying to guide to improve the business. All right.
Right.
Again, we're hitting the audience with a lot, Ian, and we know that. So we're covering some of these at a high level and we're maybe doing a little bit of a flyby. But the whole idea is to let you look and let the audience say, hey, this resonates with me. We're doing it. Let's move on. Or maybe some of these ideas stick and say, yeah, that's something we'd like to do better. And thanks for the heads up. This is a little bit of a riff. This is the riff on the cost pass through and the sort of the vendor increases, the inflation increases. It pays a lot. It pays you to really study this process from how the from the beginning, which is when the cost change notice is received from your vendors, all the way through to the end, the execution stage, when ideally your customers have accepted your new price. Doesn't mean every customer accepts every price, but it means in aggregate, if you know you're eating a certain amount of cost increase coming through the channel, if you don't pass it through, you're
Right.
eating it somewhere. So you've got to figure out how you're going to do that, how you want to apply a sales strategy to it. And there's different ways to cover this. But the point being, you're racing the clock. The minute you get the cost change notice from your suppliers, the clock is on till when that's effective in your new costs as to and then the clock's racing against when the customer starts paying the new price that allows you to cover that cost. If there's any gap, it's costing you money. And let's face it, some of those are commercial decisions. You may decide, hey, we've got to hold price for Ian Heller because he's a tough negotiator. If we raise him 4%, he's going, it's going to be a problem,
Right.
right? Everyone understands
Yeah.
that's the reality of negotiating, but at least make that part of a strategy versus, well, throwing my hands up and, well, we really don't know what we're doing. We think we passed it through, but we're not measuring the before and after by customer. You're just guessing at that point. So make this a little bit more of a disciplined process if you haven't already, and it will pay dividends real quick.
Yeah, I tell you, my last executive job was at Whitecap, the construction supply distributor, and without software, nothing but training and changes in process and accountability and reporting. We saw just hundreds of basis points of profitability improvement. And you think about like one thing I said at the beginning of the webinar, Scott, which is that we had 4.2% inflation, I think first quarter, or like I said, it was first quarter last month or something. That means you're getting price increases soon, and you're probably already getting price increases. Are you really configured to both capture those, pass on those price increases, and know that you've done so? Do you have a measurement for it? But I will say that of all the ways you can increase prices to customers, passing through costs, in my experience, is the easiest because everyone understands that if my costs go up, I can't sell for the same amount of money anymore. So yeah, you can be, this tough negotiator. You can face a tough negotiator, but very few people are going to say it's not fair for you to pass on a price increase
Right.
that you just got yourself.
Absolutely. And the thing to think about is, if you haven't done it, I would encourage folks to document the process and start figuring out how to measure it and or assign that to a team or the folks that are doing is, have some executive visibility of, hey, what are the big cost changes through, what are the dates, what's the amount, how are we communicating that to your sales team ahead of time so they can get ahead of it with their communicating to the customer. Right. And then measure before and after. If you know your customers and you know that your major vendors and you can say, hey, on such and such dates, we're eating cost. All right. You can measure the 3 months before the cost change and the 3 months after the, 1 month, 1, 2, 3
Right.
after the cost change. Typically, you might see a little dip in month one or even month two because you have quotes in progress, you have orders that you've committed, and that's just part of it. But you don't, after month two or month three, you really want to make sure you're
Yeah.
back to where you want to be. Otherwise, you have to start digging to say where did we eat it? Where's the problem? And so that's just a real life pro tip about uh, document your process, figure out where the handoffs are, and start measuring the throughput and as well as the end result. And you'll find, I'll almost guarantee you'll find money that's worthwhile in that process. All right.
All
Let's
right.
move along to the next one because this is a doozy. We could do a whole day workshop on this
No,
and
let's get after it.
well, so what could possibly go wrong with this? So SPAs stand for Special Price Authorization or Agreement. Most people know what that term means, especially in the electrical and HVAC business. These are endemic to cost of goods, cost protection rebates. So we're not going to cover everything. This would be a whole webinar on its own. But what I'm breaking down here is the steps of what a SPA process is. It's an agreement between the manufacturer and the distributor partner to offer special costs to certain customers and certain products for a certain
Right.
period of time. And it starts with identifying the opportunity from your sales team. Say, hey, we're going to get a better cost, or the manufacturer is offering better costs so we can compete for certain pieces of business or for the duration of certain project quotes. But if you look at each step where these are all handoffs, and when I say what could possibly go wrong, it's not like one person does all this or it's all automated. It's not. Mostly this is manual between sales, between maybe your IT team, your purchasing team, whoever's going to negotiate how it's going to get loaded to your system, how it's going to match up with the data on the supplier products and your products, on and on, all the way through how you want to manage pricing, how you manage your claim, and then particularly how you reconcile rejections and get settlement. Because the whole game here, all you're really doing is you're getting you're overpaying for inventory going in. So for this blue pen, the manufacturer says, hey, it's $1 into stock, right? But if you sell to Ian, because he buys a lot of them, we're going to protect you to 80 cents cost. Okay, cool. Well, on day one, I buy the blue pen for $1. I put it in the inventory. By the time I sell it to Ian, right? By the time I do my claim back, by the time I get the rebate settlement credit from my manufacturer, how long is that? 3, 6 months? So that you're becoming the distributor is really banking the manufacturer for that delta. So the whole idea of the spot process is get your money back as fast as you can by managing the process end to end as well as you can with visibility that cuts across multiple functions.
Hey,
Ian, any thoughts on this one, Ian?
yeah, I mean, I've dealt with this a lot. Whitecap was particularly good at this, by the way, at least became very good at this. I had a guy named Pete who worked for me who was just a master at making sure we actually got all this. Is it possible to run this process well without some kind of a specific coupon code or discount code or spa code literally coded onto the transaction at time of sale? I mean, do you have to have that code in the process so you can tie the transaction back to the manufacturer's spa?
At least in the cases I'm familiar with, it's very systematic. Or
Right.
ideally, it should be systematic because ultimately on your claim, you're going to have whatever the rules you have with your manufacturer on what they need to prove that you sell, whether it's a point of sale report or something that identifies the product and the customer and the zip code where it was sold, so they can tie it back, say, oh yeah, that was authorized. So if I understand your question right, yeah, this really is hard to do manually, especially
Yeah,
if you're
right.
of any size and scale with spas. And there's some really good solutions out there that people might be using already to manage parts of the process, but not there's no one piece of software that manages it all. So there's a lot of human in the loop here by necessity, but there's definitely automation opportunities to make this more seamless at point of so when people are entering orders, they know they've got a spa cost to protect them, and they get covered for their commission and their margin. But it also works for the company's financial reporting as well as recovery to ultimately
Right.
make sure that those dollars are getting settled back and they're even.
And when you go in and consult with clients, is either doing a spa audit or setting up a spa best practice part of your work, Scott?
Yes, and particularly for spas, there's a whole diagnostic around
Okay.
looking at each of these steps and measuring the dollars that are involved flowing through it. identifying bottlenecks and where the money can be unlocked with better process and maybe a little bit of automation.
Got it. Okay, good.
Thank you. Okay, Ian, I don't know. I thought that, this slide is not meant to be controversial, but maybe people agree. But AI is here to stay. It's changing the world. Leading distributors are already using AI to their benefit. Um, you got the conference coming up in a couple weeks, which I can't wait to hear from the practitioners as well as the providers of
Yep.
how this is working in real life. Um, but AI is not the easy button. So a lot of what we've talked about up till now, that's how distributors made money over the last 100 years before AI. There's a lot you can do with management, strategy, policy, process, and people getting aligned around goals. But with that said, AI definitely has a place. And what I would offer and open it up into your comments as well is if I were thinking about where to apply AI, I mean, there's a lot of use cases. But for price and cost management, for margin management, just in the processes we've just covered so far, there's a lot of use cases that you can think about to apply AI, agentic AI, to go find needles in the haystack of
Yeah.
certain transaction types, margin losses, really almost anything that you view as an opportunity that your humans might be doing today. The people that are analysts or that are charged with some of this if they have enough time to do it, they might get to some of it. But where I see AI helping a lot, is you can deploy these things to go find needles in the haystack.
Yep.
So instead of having your skilled analyst digging through Excel spreadsheets and basically digging through the haystack, right, and hoping they find something, make it easy for them to tee up those opportunities with an agentic AI or a similar tool to bring those opportunities up that not only they can be solved by the human, by your staff, or and maybe it's a transactional issue that you're like, oh yeah, I'm glad we caught that. We can fix it. Or,
Sure.
and I've seen other cases where you actually find the tips of the iceberg where it's like, oh, you start seeing some patterns of certain transactions or issues. And it's like, oh, it's not just those two examples. It's like that's happening all the time. And so
Right.
it gives, again, where AI frees up time, it gives your skilled people the opportunity then to take those bigger issues and run them to ground and solve them for you. That's
Right.
really where the big benefit is I've seen. So, Ian, what are your thoughts on AI?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're blown away by LLMs, but there's just the start. Agentic's going to be much bigger. I mean, I think LLMs are to AI what EDI was to digital transformation, where it's just the very beginning of the enormous change we're going to see. And agentic AI, we do have a workshop after our conference that that covers AI. It's by Nick Pericles. It covers agentic AI. I mean, you really need to understand this stuff. I mean, I've done three keynotes in three countries in the last few months, and I asked people, how many of you know what agentic AI is? These are all distributor audiences. Out of an aggregate crowd of maybe 500 or 600 people, fewer than a dozen hands went up. Distributors are not on agentic AI yet. I mean, the more sophisticated people on this call are, but I would argue that even within those individuals' organizations, they don't understand the power of agentic AI. And one of the use cases is it can monitor your transaction set and identify problems that no human analyst is going to find, at least not nearly as frequently. And that includes a whole bunch of opportunities to improve margin just by making sure you've got the right processes and people are complying with them. So I agree with you completely.
Yeah, and so for AI, I have to admit, a year ago, even up to a year ago, I was kind of a skeptic around this stuff because
Yeah.
I thought it was more
Yep.
hype than reality. And I was like, they're way ahead of ourselves on expecting what this is going to do for the business. But I've changed my mind. I've learned a lot and I've seen it. Now I actually have seen it in action where some of these things, it's not having AI run your business. It's about letting AI, delegating to your AI tools, however you want to build them and deploy them to do the work that your staff either doesn't want to do, doesn't like to do, or really tries to do a little bit of, but can't get around to getting it all done because
Right.
business goes on and there's a lot to do. And it's really, you can find use cases that are low risk, high
Right.
value to get started with. And before, I'm not at the stage yet where I think, well, I want my AI agent to start changing prices in my system
Right.
unilaterally.
Agreed.
We'll probably get there, but for right now, use it where it makes you money on known issues that have been around a long time. All right, next one.
Agreed.
All right, so as we wind this down here, some of the key takeaways, just to reiterate, is I think the leading distributors are doing some things differently, and maybe this came through a bit in the survey as well. Is profitability improvement becomes an operating system discipline. It's not just a pricing initiative where you expect, hey, we're to do a pricing initiative. We bought some software and then we solved our problem. It's broader than that, and it cuts across really the whole business from sales, ops to finance, even with touches on IT and HR. So be thinking about it end to end. You can unlock a lot of margin in your core processes of stuff that's already been negotiated, that's in the four walls of your building, so to speak. That
Yep.
doesn't mean you have to go out and negotiate better pricing necessarily all the time with your customers. Sometimes just look and say, how are we doing these handoffs internally? And let's assign a team or an executive to have end-to-end responsibility that cuts across three or four departments versus maybe every department doing really, really well themselves, but the end-to-end is lacking. So think about it as a holistic process. And you got to be able to see it, with good data, good systems, good reporting, good people. You want to quantify it and size it so you know what the size of the prize is and what's worth to go after amongst your other priorities, and then have an action orientation to go capture it and bring it into the bottom line and measure that progress, and keep it going. So hopefully those are some takeaways we can offer the audience, Ian, that make sense.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there are different levels of sophistication. I think most great distributors get to the point where they really have to put in place pricing software to institutionalize, harden the processes, be able to measure properly. But nothing's stopping you from starting tomorrow with the basics. And I know you advise on both. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you help clients, Scott, before we wrap up?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, thank you, Ian. I just thought, here's a quick slide on how I work with clients. And in case any of this resonated with you and you think, boy, there's something maybe to talk about, I'll just give you a quick heads up. The way I like to work with clients is to diagnose, talk about where the opportunities are, to study processes, quantify it, build a roadmap, build a plan that with you and your team in line with your goals, and then give you the opportunity to figure out how you want to act. But whether you act on your own or you have someone help you with implementation, the key is to give you clarity, give you confidence, and give you the capability to go make the changes that you want to make. So if you're looking for someone to support that effort or be a sounding board, I'd welcome an introductory call just to get to know each other, talk about it, and help you take some insight and put it in your pocket.
Yeah,
So feel
well,
free to reach out in any way you see fit.
yeah, so it's Scott at marginmaxpartners.com. His website is marginmaxpartners.com. This will be a very, very, very high ROI engagement in my experience. Okay, so let me wrap up. Hang on for a minute, Scott.
Okay.
Please, everyone else, just hang on for just a minute while I tell you about some upcoming programs. Next week, we have a technology leader panel with Sam Bob, who's the co-founder and CTO of Cavio, and Jay Schneider, who's the founder and president of B2B Squared, probably one of the leading e-commerce experts on B2B in the world. And it's sponsored by Cavio, which is a terrific product. We're going to talk about something we referred to earlier, which is fixing the data problem for AI. And I posted this on LinkedIn this morning, and someone posted, "Well, don't you need to fix the data problem for all kinds of reasons?" And I said, "Yeah, that's absolutely true. Plus AI." And so I think no matter where you are in the AI journey, this will help you fix your data problem. This is sort of a lineup of some of our upcoming programs. I won't read through them all, but as you can see, we really help you run a better distribution company. That's our goal. That's our passion. And that's our experience. We've got a lot of distribution experience on our team. So these are programs that you can sign up for to address everything from AI to technology. There's an economics update. We'll talk about customer experience and distribution. You name it, it's somewhere on our agenda for the year. Please go to distributionstrategy.com. You can sign up for our newsletter, this is all free content for you, and sign up for our webinars. We'd love to see you there. Okay. I think we are done, Scott. Thank you so much for your time and expertise and sharing it with our audience. To all the attendees, thanks for being here. Go and raise profits the right way. And if you have some success with it, tell us what you learned. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next distribution strategy group webinar. Bye now.